Good afternoon. Welcome to the Barnes & Noble Midday Mystery Virtual event celebrating Carlene O Connor's new release, No Strangers Here, which I have here, right here. I'm Colleen Cambridge, the author of the Philida Bright Mysteries. It's a series set in 1930s England where Agatha Christie's housekeeper, Philida Bright, solves mysteries and hunts down murderers. The second book in that series, is also out today. Carlene, it's so fabulous to be here with you today to talk about No Strangers Here. You're known for your Irish Village mysteries, but this is the first book in a new series called the County Kerry Mysteries. I've read it. I loved it. It's a lot different than the Irish Village series. A little darker, a little grittier, with definite shades of Shetland and Louise Penny, and maybe even a hint of All Creatures Great and Small. Tell us a little bit about the series.
Thanks, Colleen, and congratulations to you as well on A Trace of Poison. I know we'll be talking about that a little bit too. This series is set in the Dingle Peninsula, and as you mentioned, it's a little bit darker than my Irish Village mystery series, but there is that nod to James Herriot because my main character, Dympna Wilde, Dr. Dympna Wilde, she is a veterinarian and is coming home to Dingle from Dublin for the first time in a long time because, as often happens with murder mysteries, a body drops. And this is no stranger to her or the rest of the people in Dingle. This is a man whose family has kind of been at odds with her family for a long time, with a lot of secrets behind that. And so when he's found murdered on a beach, actually both of her parents, her father, who's also a veterinarian, and her mother, who is a tarot card reader, they're both suspects in the murder. And that's what kicks off our mystery and brings Dympna home from Dublin back home to Dingle.
So this is so weird, but when I was reading No Strangers Here, a friend of mine was traveling through Ireland and she happened to text our text thread and said, "Oh, we're in Dingle today and it's such a beautiful area." And I had no idea Dingle was a real place until she texted me that. I've never been to Ireland. I've been to other areas in the UK, but not Ireland. So why did you pick Dingle?
Well, I hope you make it there sometime. I had the fortune to visit Dingle before I even knew this would be a book, and it's right on the Atlantic Ocean. It's charming. It's beautiful. There are cliffs and shops and the harbor. I've always loved just harbors. It even had a little aquarium there, and they were famous for Fungi the dolphin, who was a dolphin that visited the area for I think over 20 years, that unfortunately in 2020 he has not been seen since. So but it's just a charming town with everything that Ireland has plus the ocean. So I just kind of fell in love with it. And when I was asked to do this series, I knew immediately I wanted to set it in the Dingle Peninsula.
So you've been to Ireland multiple times?
Oh yeah, multiple times, and have a lot of friends in Ireland. I do have Irish history on my great grandmother came over from Ireland, but I lived in New York City for 15 years and all my friends were Irish, and I was in a relationship with an Irish man and he brought me to his hometown, which I also fell in love with, and I based the Irish Village series on his town of Kilmallock, although I renamed it so people wouldn't get upset about all the bodies dropping there. And so I've been back about 4 times since then. I spend between 2 weeks and a month. The pandemic and everything has prevented me. I haven't been since 2019 in the fall, which was another fantastic trip. But I do plan in the future to get back a lot more often. Maybe even it would be kind of my dream to live there for a bit while researching the books.
Okay, so we got to talk about Irish names because, I'm assuming since you spent, a large amount of time in Ireland, you sort of become comfortable with the pronunciation of the names and how they don't look the way they're pronounced, at least to those of us like me who speak English. Can you talk a little bit about, are there tricks to figuring this out for those of us lay people who don't know Irish?
I would probably just say the biggest trick is just Google it, which I know can be difficult, but the opening young girl in the book, her name is Saoirse. That's always a hard one for people. And Dympna, which is pretty much pronounced like it's seen on like some Irish names. Whereas in my Irish Village characters, I have Siobhan, that one, and Grania. Those two may be a little bit unfamiliar. And when I first started started writing the books, I think I had an editor say, can you Americanize them? But why would I do that when that's what I love, are the tiny little differences, and names being one of them. I think there's a very funny Starbucks, an Irish comedian did a funny Starbucks routine, because you know how Starbucks famously gets people's names wrong anyway, but especially with the Irish names, they can be tricky. I don't want to take away from the truth of the story by phonetically spelling the names. Now, sometimes if I have an American character in there, I can get away with that, but all of the Irish people know how to pronounce the names. So that's just been one of those things I've had to say, well, we're going to have to leave this as it is.
Well, and you did that with Saoirse. You helped us pronounce Saoirse in the beginning of the book. I think it was the beginning.
Yeah.
How do you pronounce Dipna's brother's name?
Oh, Donica.
Okay, that was the other one I wasn't. And then Roisin?
Roisin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I could
you're
have,
welcome.
but that would have meant I would have had to leave the story to go do that. Not always wanting to do that.
Yeah.
So Dipna is a veterinarian. She is obviously the daughter of a veterinarian, and you deal with a lot of family stuff with them. And I want to talk about that in a minute. But talk to us about why you decided to make Dipna a veterinarian.
Originally, it's an interesting transition of what's became of this series. Originally, I thought this was going to be another cozy, lighthearted mystery. And so I pitched it to my editor as a female James Harriet, which is why I'm really glad you picked up on, kind of that all creatures great and small. And then as the process evolved, I think since Halloween's coming up, I can just say this, but at one point during the pandemic, when this book was first conceived, I had a psychic reading. And as the psychic was talking to me, and I told him I had a new series starting, and it was going to be, a cozy mystery, just like my other series, but just set in a new location with a veterinarian character, he just kept saying, oh, these books are so different. They're so different. And in my head, I'm thinking, well, they're not really so different, except, different settings, but they're both light. And it was the very next day that I caught a call from my editor, and he said, we had a publicity meeting, and my fantastic publicist, Larissa, had pointed out that a few of my Irish Village mysteries that received starred reviews were on the darker side, a little bit more suspenseful than some of the other ones. He said, so what do you think if we went completely dark with this series? It won't be a cozy. You can do whatever you want with it. And so that just opened up a whole new challenge for me, because it kind of made sense that an amateur sleuth might be a veterinarian and solve some mysteries on the side. But now we had that same premise, and yet it was going to be darker. And so that's how all that came to be. And I'm glad it did, because it was a challenge for me. Like, how do I make it believable that she's involved in investigations, and yet she still, practices as a very busy veterinarian? And that's when I introduced the detective inspector, who will, be primarily solving the crimes. And he's uncomfortable with animals. He says he's allergic, but I think partly he has a phobia. And, in that area, a lot of the suspects have animals, and she gets to go out to the farms and visit places. So she's able to be helpful, I think, in a believable way in that sense.
So as a writer, I got to ask you, how far into the book were you when they said, oh, make it darker?
Not too far, luckily. We were just in the, beginning conception, point of it. And that's why, it was challenging, but I wasn't too far down the road. And I mean, the psychic had predicted it like the day before I got the news. So I think I was prepared a little bit because of that, even though at the time I'm thinking, well, he really doesn't know what he's talking about. But kind of a fun Halloween edition there.
Yeah. So, just for some people who maybe not be is comfortable with what does it mean to go darker as opposed to a cozy. Do you mind talking about that a little bit more? And really quick, before you do that, I just want to say something to those out there watching. If you have questions, please feel free to add them into the Q&A section. And if you don't know where that is, if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen, click on Q&A, you can type your question in there. I'll do my best to get to the questions. I do have some pre-submitted questions as well. We're going to try and get to some of those as well. But anyway, go ahead,
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you asked me that, because I want readers to know, especially readers who like my Irish Village mystery series, you're in good hands. It doesn't go, in my opinion, doesn't go too dark, right? There's still humor. There's still the heart of Ireland. There's still hope. I'm very careful with the animals. The animals are all going to be fine. This is about the people. So it's darker in the sense that, I just have a little bit more leeway. There are more serious subjects that I tackle in No Strangers Here. And, people can swear and people can, do all things that adults do that sometimes we leave out of the cozy mystery. But I just personally am not the type that like to read too dark where there's no hope given. So I think, it's darker than the cozies, but to me, it doesn't go to the really dark side. There's redemption and hope and all those good things as well.
Well, I'm glad to hear that there aren't going to be any animals injured. I remember being at a talk once years ago. Nora Roberts is famous for saying she's killed a bazillion people in her books over the years, but the one time she killed a cat or a dog or they died, she didn't even kill them. She got so much more email and fan mail about that, angry about that she's like, I'm never even getting close to another animal. So thank you for those of us who are animal lovers. And you probably have some pets, I'm guessing. You write about animals and animal lovers really well.
Yeah, I do. I love animals. I have a dog, a Labradoodle. She'd be on camera if she was allowed. I've had mostly dogs and cats, all that over the years, and rabbits and really everything. And I think in another life, it would have been really fun to be a veterinarian. And I'm also so pleased because I have been writing to a veterinarian in Ireland that was so gracious with, and has been, we were talking today, in fact, he's so gracious with his time. And it's amazing because he got it right away, because I was asking him about different veterinarian medicines that could kill people. And he was talking about the normal ones. Then he's like, but if you really want to scare people, this one's called Monster in a Bottle. And it just really helped me plot the mystery. And, it helps to be able to bounce questions off him. I don't go too deep into the veterinarian practice, and I probably do make mistakes, and those aren't his fault, they're mine. But it's been really comforting to me to have that Irish veterinarian contact.
Yeah, that Monster in a Bottle was pretty scary. When I won't give anything away, but there's a point where the bottle is there and Dipna's like, put on gloves, don't touch this.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. So tell us a little bit about Dipna's background. She's a veterinarian, but she's got a lot of stuff that's going on with her life that makes her who she is. And she's also physically someone, that is, she has some, I don't want to say limitations, but she's a tiny petite person. Tell us about her.
Yeah, she's a tiny petite person. She's very short. So because of that, her whole life, she's been called nicknames, an imp or a fairy, it kind of laughed at for her height. And even as a respected doctor, sometimes she'll even wear her hair in pigtails and dresses just to kind of defy the stereotype. But she has to have stepping stools for things, or she hires taller people to put them on higher shelves. She sits on phone books to drive her VW bus. But she's a strong character. She's a strong woman. She has been through kind of a lot of trauma, and those secrets kind of unfold in the story. But in the opening, she has a husband who was involved in a financial scandal. It ruined her reputation. She has a grown son, Ben, and there are secrets with who his father is. And in the opening, it's kind of the perfect timing. Her business in Dublin is being shut down because her husband was in this financial scandal, and then he ended up taking his own life. So she's a person of trauma, but it's also made her tough, right? It's made her tough, and it's made her care about, unlike her father, who is very into animals, but he doesn't have a great bedside manner with people. Dipna really is a people person, and she knows she's not necessarily in the animal business. She's in the people business. And she has to be, because you see that with the personalities that come in and the troubles they bring, not just with the animals, but with their own troubles as well.
Yeah. So I'm just absorbing what you said. It's fascinating. Having read the book, all of this is really ringing true. And in other words, you did what you meant to do. So Dipna's father is going through some stuff.
Yes, and it's interesting. So Dipna's father is going through the beginning stages of dementia, and it makes it tough to get to the bottom of what he remembers from the murder, what he saw, why police might be questioning and suspecting him, and she doesn't suspect him at first, but then things start happening and she just doesn't know, because how much of his behavior is now influenced because of dementia, which he and the mother have actually been ignoring it for some time. So by the time the story opens, it's kind of really in full-blown crisis mode, just as she's finding out about it. So that not only affects the mystery, but it affects Dimna's relationship. And if you have things to heal with somebody, you know, like a lot of fathers and daughters do, or Dimna and her father did, you know, how do you heal that when, you know, you're not really dealing with the same person anymore? And so it just adds to the challenges that she's facing as she goes back home.
Yeah, having had a mother-in-law who passed from Alzheimer's, and my own mother is at the very beginning stages of just memory loss. It is tough. So seeing it portrayed in a novel is, you know, it's a little close to home, but it was portrayed very well. It was very sensitively portrayed. Dimna's mother, now here's a question I wouldn't have known to ask you if you hadn't given us that little intro. Dimna's mother is a tarot card reader, so you got to tell us, was she a tarot card reader before you had your psychic reading?
You know what, I just during the pandemic, everybody else was baking bread, but I'm not a baker. So I took tarot lessons from a really and that was the guy I had the reading from. He was really fantastic, like a true artist, in my opinion, with the tarot cards. It's storytelling to me, whether you believe the prophecy part of it or not. It's storytelling, and he was fantastic. And that helped prompt me to say, you know what, I want to put that in the book. But in my trips to Ireland, I did see caravans, you know, of tarot card readers, and that kind of imprinted on me as well. And, you know, I know a few Irish psychics, and, you know, I'm not saying everybody there believes it or has it, but there are psychics in Ireland, and, you know, it's kind of part of the myth and the lore in different parts. And I like that kind of thing. So I wanted her to be a tarot card reader.
I think tarot card reading is interesting because it basically opens up possibilities and gets your mind to think about things that, and you know, it doesn't necessarily foretell the future. It can help a person look in a certain direction or open up their mind. I don't know if that's how you feel. Do you have a favorite tarot deck that you use?
You know what, I wouldn't say I have a favorite, but I went a little crazy when I was taking these classes, and I bought like 20 decks. So there are some really beautiful Italian decks that I have, and I'm probably forgetting the exact name of them, but I like the Italian decks. The artistry on it is really pretty. And the funny thing is also during my reading, he knew I was taking his class, and he said, "You're not thinking of doing tarot reading as a living, are you?" And I said, "Oh, it's fun." He goes, "Because you're going to be way too busy. Like, you're going to be so busy." And I haven't touched the tarot cards since that reading, and just a lot of what he said, which was a lot of fun. I wanted to ask you about A Trace of Poison, because I read that as well and really enjoyed it. And I'm just wondering, like, how you have it set is a historical novel, and it's set at Agatha Christie's home.
Yeah.
How was that intimidating, or how hard or easy was it to research about a real person during her time?
Oh, thanks for asking. And we won't spend a lot of time on it, but just briefly, yeah, it was a little scary, but in a good way, because Agatha, best-selling author in the world of all time, you don't want to screw that up. But the nice thing about it is she's a very side character. So she's the friend and employer of Philida Bright, the housekeeper. And Agatha doesn't want to have anything to do with solving mysteries, because she'd rather write them, put the clues where she wants, which I'm sure you can relate to, because you know, heaven knows if you and I tried to solve mysteries in real life, we wouldn't get anywhere.
Right.
So that's the situation. And actually, my Philida reminds me a little bit of your character. Is it Detective Sergeant Neely? Is that her title?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, stronger women a little bit, you know, they're not in the bloom of youth. I think Neely's probably in her 40s, 50s.
Yeah, and so is Dimna, actually. Yeah.
Okay. I guess I thought of her maybe early 40s, but
Yeah,
Neely reminded me a little bit of Philida, a strong woman who knows her worth, knows what she can do, and doesn't, you know, isn't humble. And she's paired up with Carmack, right? Is that his name, Carmack or Cormac?
Yeah.
Cormac, sorry. So maybe talk about that dynamic a little bit.
Yeah, you know, it was just a lot of fun, and it a lot of it wasn't planned. It just kind of came as I was writing these characters. He's also short. He's also kind of been ostracized for that. And as someone who is a detective inspector, you know, he wants all the respect he can get. And a lot of guards will call him Napoleon behind his back, because he can be very just, you know, forward looking on and not a great team player at all times, but he does also really care about the investigations. And he and Dipna do have a chemistry, but they're also at odds. They're on opposite sides of this case. You know, he's trying to investigate her parents. She's trying to protect them. But there's an undeniable connection and interplay between them. And like I said, he's not comfortable with animals, and animals are her entire life, you know, and he does have a bit of an allergy and claims that, but I believe it's more phobia based, and he uses the allergy as an excuse. And then there's the dynamic between his mother and her father, because his mother has what we call ALS here. They call it MND, motor neuron disease, in Ireland. So his mother is struggling with the physical problem of MND, whereas her father is fine physically and struggling with the mental aspect. So they have some interesting qualities that mirror each other, but also kind of put them at odds a little bit.
And Cormac is new to Dingle, whereas Dipna is coming back. They both kind of new to the area. Dipna's coming back. He's new to the area, and he's coming in and dealing with staff like Neely, who have been doing their job for a while. And the previous inspector was sort of let go, and he has a history with Dipna. So there's a lot of stuff going on there.
Yeah.
That Cormac has to deal with.
Yeah, definitely. And it is true. She's not a stranger there, except she's estranged from, you know, a lot of the people there. So when she comes back, to her, it's like no time has passed between all these dramas that took place and now, even though for the people that continued living there, you know, they do have that distance in time, including Paul Byrne, who, when she knew him, you know, growing up, he wasn't a detective yet, but that was his position. And so there are interesting overlaps of characters and roles and how they feel either included or excluded, which, you know, kind of is a fun way to play into the title of No Strangers here.
Yes, I was wondering where that title came from. Who came up with that? You, your editor, the group?
Well, my editor came up with the idea that for this series, all the titles are going to be based on an Irish saying. So, of course, that's William Butler Yeats. There are no strangers here, only friends you haven't yet met. So I went through different Irish sayings, and I really like taking, you know, no strangers here out of that. And it does help inspire, you know, what might be the theme or topic of the book.
So I noticed, so when poor Dipna shows up at her parents' veterinary clinic the very first time, it's kind of crazy. And there's a whole bunch of animals in, like, I don't know what was like this front courtyard. And I was just, you know, I was thinking I could totally relate to that, because I'm not a vet and I don't have room for more than 3 dogs. We have 3 dogs, but you know, someone who wants animals, how do you don't say no to, you know, an animal in need. And I just loved how she just kind of was like, well, I guess we'll figure it out. And she did. And it was great. She just dove right in. I just had another question and it escaped me, but let's go back to, so this is the first book in the series. I'm guessing you're either finished with or working on the second book right now.
I'm working on the second book. I'm close to finishing a first draft, but then there'll be a lot of rewrites. So it's starting to really take shape. I'm getting there. I wish I was done, but I still have a few months work left on it.
I feel that. I just finished a book a week ago. So I love the feeling of having finished a book. So can you tell us anything about what's going on in the second book without any spoilers?
Yeah, absolutely. And then I honestly want to hear about your next one too. And is it a continuation of the Philida Bright? It is called Some of Us Are Looking. And this quote is based on Oscar Wilde. All of us are in the gutter, but some of us are looking at the stars. And it involves 4 young 20-somethings who are traveling across Ireland in their caravan. And when they land in the Dingle Peninsula, they start causing a bit of trouble. They have 2 really big mastiffs, and they have a talking parrot, and they're kind of performing and selling things for tourists. That area is a really popular hiking trail, and they park near the popular hiking trail. And so it will involve Dipna, because there is a plot line with with wild fox and a man really trying to save them from getting hurt by traffic. And there are the animals that are involved with this foursome in the caravan. And unfortunately, one of the young women is found murdered, and plenty of suspects and plenty of reasons for both Dimpna and Cormac and Neely to all be involved again. So it was a little bit challenging. You know, I had so much power behind the personal problems Dimpna was going through in the first book, and I still want to carry that energy into the second. But not every book is the same, as you know, but I found a lot of fun ways to grow and things to dive into in the second book as well.
Very good. Side note, have you read any of the books by Margaret Mitsushima, the Timber Creek Canine Mysteries?
No, but I'm going to write that down.
Well, I think you might enjoy them, and our other watchers might as well. The main character is a cop. She has a canine officer that she's a handler for, but the second most prominent character is a veterinarian. So there's a lot of vet stuff tied into it as well.
Yeah.
And they're set in like near Denver, like outside of Denver, like in the sticks of Colorado. So anyway, fun series.
And may I sneak in, just because I think it's a good segue. I loved how in your book, you know, as a writer, you know, it's first of all, the Murder Detection Club. I'm assuming that really exists, right? I was so jealous of that. Like, wouldn't you want to be part of this Murder Detection Club? And then I also really loved all these writers, mystery writers, arguing about what poison might have killed them. So I'm just wondering, did you have as much fun with that as it seemed you did? And how did you pick the drink, the Vieux Carré, as the poison method?
Oh, I'd love to talk about it. I won't talk too long, but
and how much did you drink as research?
My God, so much, so much. So for those of you who, just to fill you in, A Trace of Poison is the second book in the series. And Agatha Christie, this is real. Agatha Christie was a member of the Detection Club, which still exists today. And it was a club of mystery writers who were well known and included Dorothy L. Sayers and G.K. Chesterton. And so in my book, they all come to the small town, and they're doing a fundraiser, and there's a contest for unpublished authors, and the winner of the short story contest gets to have their story published internationally. And of course, at the cocktail party where they're all at, somebody ends up dead. So you've got a whole entire slew of suspects, all of whom write mysteries, study poisons, you know, create red herrings and plot twists. And they're all, as you mentioned, standing over the dead body, arguing about what kind of poison it is. So that was rather fun. And it was really fun writing a mystery with a bunch of mystery writers for the reasons you mentioned. Yeah. You know, I can make fun and like do wink winks, because as mystery writers, you know, we like to put clues where we want to, and you know, red herrings and so on. The cocktail, the Vieux Carré, was actually a cocktail created in the late 30s, but I bumped it up a little bit in my book. And I needed a cocktail that was unique and had a unique ingredient, so I could have someone poison that ingredient. So much fun. Really fun writing that. Yeah. So when you're crafting your mysteries, do you know who done it? When you start, do you plot things out?
I do plot things out, mainly, not that it's my instinct, but I'm mainly required to hand in an editor to my, an outline to my editor. So I do now try to figure out who did it and what secrets, and who the other suspects are and what secrets they're hiding. Once in a great while, it changes. And as you're writing, another character kind of pops up and say, actually, I did it and here's why. And if it's better, I always go with that, and I have to submit a new outline to the editor. In this case, though, the killer stayed the same, but I think it took me a while. Sometimes it takes me a while to figure it out, because if you have multiple people with, you know, really good reasons to kill the person, which you often do, it can take a while to figure out, okay, who had the strongest motive and the means and the opportunity.
Well, it made a lot of sense to me who did it. And I mean, I kind of wanted it to be that person anyway, for a number of reasons I'm not going to go into because they would be spoilers. But yeah, so I'll just say really quickly, I never know who done it. I'm figuring out as I go, because I don't plot, and I wish I did. I wish I could be like you and plot, because it makes my life so much more difficult.
Oh, so it's torture, though. It's torture.
I think it maybe is torture for both of us in different ways. I don't know.
And so, I like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I like in yours how there's even a question of, is the first victim the intended target?
Yes.
Right? Or was that accidental? That keeps another line of suspense going, which is really fun to do in murder mysteries too.
Yes, and when you have everybody in an enclosed, like they were all at the cocktail party, so it's your quintessential English manor house mystery. You've got
Yeah.
an entire, almost an entire county or an entire town that it could have been. So that gives you a lot to work with. But you had a lot of people with backstory, and yeah, I mean, I thought it was great, and it was really, it wasn't too gritty because I don't like too dark. And I recently started watching Shetland. And so it really felt like Shetland to me. Like I was reading and watching Shetland going, oh, I like this. And I've got to go to Ireland because I have not been,
Yes.
been to
Yes.
Scotland, but not Ireland. How long does it take you to write a book generally?
When I first started writing, I would get about a year per book. It's 15, 16 years in for me. So I write 2 books and a novella a year has been my pace for the past couple of years. So with the darker mysteries, I'm probably in and out in about 6 months total. But that doesn't mean that I'm not like thinking about it beforehand. Like I might be writing one book, but ideas start coming. So I just start jotting them down lightly so that when I actually have time to start the new book, I'm not going in completely cold. So I do about 2.5 a year, and they each probably get between 4 and 6 months, and the novellas maybe a month.
That's good. That's a pretty aggressive schedule. It's not crazy, but it's aggressive. So that's good. Should I just hand it? Well, someone is asking if you'll be writing more Irish Village cozies, but it sounds like you will.
Yes, absolutely. In fact, it's hard to see, but it's up there. The 10th is coming out in February, Murder at an Irish Bakery. And I'm already going to be soon starting the outline for the 11th, Murder and Irish Chipper. So do not worry, they are going to continue.
We're getting hearts on that. Somebody hearted your answer. Yay.
They're going to continue. What's great as a writer too, is like my editor and I haven't even discussed like how many books or when will it end, because I don't think anybody wants it to at this point, including me. And I like the balance now that I write lighter and then darker. So I'm fully ready to keep going with both.
So do you find different research, levels of research? I'm guessing much more research for the Carey County series, only because of the veterinary angle, but more research, less research, about the same?
Oh, definitely more research with the first book in any new series. So there was more research because it was the first and I had to set everything up. And the veterinarian part was really a challenge. I had like a stack of vet books, which to be honest, I don't think I went through very well, but that's why I was so thrilled. Whenever somebody in a profession that you're writing in your book is willing to talk to you. And this guy, he has his own book, Austin Donnelly. I read his memoir. It's Whiskers, Feather, and Fur. And I loved it. And it's set in Ireland. He's from Wicklow.
Yeah, you mentioned that in your book.
Yes. Oh my gosh. It's so good. And I read that and I'm like, okay, this is what I want my series to be like, with a murder thrown in, So I was more than thrilled when he was willing to not only answer my questions, but really get in the spirit of what writers do. Like he wasn't like, what, you want to kill somebody with veterinary medicine? He was like, this is what you do, so yeah, that was a lot of fun. So more research because of the veterinarian practice, which I know I still get some things wrong, but also, more research with, this is the first time using a detective inspector, and then above them is a chief superintendent. And so a little bit more research that way.
I get that right. Yeah. Side note, I have a very, very good friend who was an ER doc for 30 plus years, almost 40 years. And he's my go-to person for medical stuff, kind of like what you have for your vet. And I'll text him. He's a super close friend. I'll text him, be like, I need to kill someone. And he'll text me back, how much blood? How long do they need to be tortured? He'll ask me all these. If anybody saw these texts, they'd be like, what is going on? So I that. And that's really, that's nice you have that resource.
Because I was fascinated with the use of nicotine as a poison too, which is something I never, ever would have thought of. So it is so great to have those experts and find things that are kind of unique. I mean, poison is such a ubiquitous thing for writers to use, right? And you and I, it seems like both found like unique spins on that.
Well, Agatha Christie knew a lot about poisons because during the war, she worked in the dispensary at the hospital. And so
I learned that in your book.
So I did. So yay, it worked. So she used nicotine in one of her books too. It was 3-Act Death or 3-Act Death or whatever it is 3-Act, Murder in 3 Acts. It was one title in England and one title here. So, and so I have her in the book talking about how she was going to use nicotine, but all by itself, nicotine, just straight is very potent and it kills pretty fast. So yeah, and that's the reason Agatha used so many poisons in many of her books, not because she was trying to keep it less edgy, even though she probably was, but because she knew all about the poisons. So, and then you mentioned research, and I was going to say one of the fun things for research for you might be to read all the James Herriot books, because why not? For inspiration for veterinary issues. Like I'm rereading all the Agatha Christie books as inspiration, but it's still research. It's still work.
Absolutely. Yeah. I've also been taken with, and I watched the new James Herriot series on BBC too. And my mom was a huge James Herriot fan and read all the books. And then what I've actually found fascinating is I have been reading veterinarian memoirs. And those are just fantastic to, kind of get the grip of, at least get the feel of like how demanding the job is and how crazy the job can get. So that's been part of my fun research, is just all the memoirs. And luckily there are a ton of veterinarian memoirs out there.
Who'd have thought? Like modern day, like contemporary memoirs, or all time?
They're contemporary memoirs. Yeah. And, I started with Austen's, and his was and still is my favorite. But then I noticed that, both from America and UK, vets everywhere are writing their memoirs because, there's so many stories they have to tell.
Yes. Well, there's a lot of people with pets. So I'm telling you, especially during, as we all probably know, during the pandemic, a lot of people were adopting pets because they were home more.
So do you not know who did it when you start writing? Are you not plotting it out that way? Or what's your process?
So I'm almost like the reader and the detective when I'm writing it. I'm just doing the investigation. And if a clue shows up, I'm like, I wonder what this means. I'm making light of it, but in a way, that's kind of how it goes for me. That doesn't mean I don't go back and change things. And I will say the book I just finished that I turned in last week, I actually knew who'd done it from the beginning, and I never changed my mind. But I did change the victim. So either way, I'm just never going to write the darn thing straight through. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. So do you have like what's your writing process? Like, do you write every day? Do you write, do you go by word count, page count? How do you manage that?
I primarily write Monday through Friday, and if I'm able, I take the weekends off. Now, if I'm getting closer to a deadline and I'm a little bit behind, then I'll write on the weekends too. And I tend to start in the morning after dog walking and things like that are completed. And I do try to stick to like a 2,000 words a day word count if I'm at the beginning of a first draft. And then now that I'm nearly completing my first draft of this second book, so I don't worry about the word count anymore, because technically I've already met the word count requirement. So now I'm just, I write until kind of the energy is gone for the day for the scene. But otherwise I try to stick at that 2,000 words because I'm a big rewriter. So I like to try to get my first drafts done so that I have a couple months to rewrite.
Now, see, I'm similar in the sense that I have a word count per day, but I write one draft because I'm constantly massaging the heck out of it. Like I'm always fixing it. So by the time I type the last scene, it's done. Like I don't have to go back. Again, that's not necessarily what I recommend. It's just the way my process works. And if I have 2,000 word count a day, I'm really happy with that. That's a good number of words. It gets you to the end if you do.
And sometimes I'm a little under and sometimes a little over, it's just kind of the target. I don't get too like, oh no, I need to do 100 more words, right? If I get close enough and the energy goes for me, then I set it aside for the day.
I'm just reviewing some of the other questions to make sure that so people are asking, what do you do if you have writer's block? How do you set the mood to write your books? Things like that. How do you push through, get your brain in gear?
I'm thinking they're imagining me drinking like whiskey or tea, but I don't. But that's after. That's when I'm celebrating. So I actually taught a writing workshop for a lot of years, and it's the same workshop I took before I published my first book. It has a whole section on writer's block, right? So basically, I don't get writer's block because I've learned to write even when you don't want to write. and write when you're scared and write when it's uncomfortable. To me, that's really what writer's block is the fear of not writing perfectly. And the first thing I really try to get all the students of mine to understand is that you're going to feel the fear. You're not going to write perfect. And that's for me why I rely on the rewriting, so that I can just let the first drafts come out, mistakes and all, warts and all, and see what's there, and kind of like sifting for gold. You're going to have dirt in there. So, but the more you sift, and if you keep, going through that process, you'll be left with mostly the gold. Like, you never write a perfect book, right? You never finish a book and say, I couldn't have done better. Like, you always have that feeling, I could do better. But I put that time in, and I just relax. I try to have fun with it. I try to put myself in the world. Sometimes I do, I have a virtual reality headset, and during the pandemic, I was able to actually visit the cliff where the body is found in No Strangers Here virtually. And it was so cool. And it just kind of makes you feel like you're there. So that's the closest I've come to doing that type of preparation to get into something.
Wait, I need to hear about this virtual reality headset. We're gonna have to talk later.
It's Oculus Quest. I mean, it's just a Facebook Oculus Quest thing, but I was alone during the pandemic, so I was on it a lot, and it is kind of fun.
Fabulous. I know we're running out of time. I don't think we have too much more time. Your next book comes out in February, and that's an Irish Village mystery. The next Carey County novel, is that a year from now, or?
Yeah, I think they'll all be about on the same schedule. October release for the County Carey mysteries, and it's a February release for the Irish Village. And in between, I'll have a couple little novellas coming out next year with my Home to Ireland series that only ended up being a 2-book series, but there'll be 2 novellas with those same characters coming up next year in 2024.
And what are you reading now? What's on your to be read pile? Tell us what.
I'm really into psychological thrillers. So I just finished a book called Hidden Pictures. And the first name of the author is Jason, and it's a tough last name to pronounce, so that is not going to fly back into my head right now. And I finished Ruth Ware's The It Girl, and I finished Tracy Clark's book Hide. She's a really good friend and great author, and that book comes out in December. Fabulous. And what about you? What are you reading?
Well, I just finished No Strangers Here a couple days ago.
And I'm so sorry. I finished A Trace of Poison and loved it too.
It's in your background. We can see it. I just finished reading Killers of a Certain Age by Deanna Raybourn. Did you read that? It's kind of fun.
Oh, I've been seeing it. I've been meaning. It's on my list. Yeah.
It's kind of fun. And then Susan Ilya McNeil's Mother-Daughter Traitor Spy is on my to be read. And I just finished Steeped in Secrets, I think it's called. That's coming from Kensington, and it's super, super cute. It's about a bookshop, or like a tea shop with paranormal elements to it. And I'm currently reading also, oh my God, I just lost it. I can't remember.
Yeah.
I can't remember what the other one. I do have a couple books going at once.
Yeah, I have an Irish memoir too. That Tom Phelan is the author, although the title is escaping me. But I'm starting that as well, which is really good.
Very good. Well, I think we're wrapping up now. If somebody from Barnes and Noble, just let me know by the chat if that's confirmation. In the meantime, let me just see if there's any more questions here on the paper that I want to ask you. Oh, somebody wants to know what's the best writing advice you ever received?
I think the best writing advice really is to just write, just write and don't quit. And writing is rewriting. So let your first drafts have mistakes. Just let it come out. Don't let your own sense of imperfection stop you, because you're not going to write a perfect book off the go, and writing is practicing and writing. So just keep at it and keep writing.
Very good. Okay, well, I think we are wrapping up now, and I'm supposed to let everyone know that if you bought a ticket to this event that included a copy of No Strangers Here with a signed book plate, those are going to be delivered to them. They're going to be mailed, shipped out in 8 to 10 business days. But if you didn't do that, and now you really need to get one of these books, which hopefully everybody who's watching will, you can get extra copies of No Strangers Here or at barnesandnoble.com, or also your local BNN store. So thank you ever so much, everyone, for being here. Barnes & Noble, thanks for sponsoring this. This was really super fun. It was a blast to chat with you, Carlene. I can't wait to meet you in person so we can actually...
I know. Will you make me a Vieux Carré without the poison?
I would definitely. You know how many people keep saying that to me? No, I want the drink, but I don't want the poison in it.
Yes.
I'm like, oh, we'll see about that.
Hmm.
Anybody who's interested, the recipe for the cocktail is at the back of the book. So at the back of A Trace of Poison. This is
Oh,
the
that's-
second
oh,
book.
it
The first
is.
book came out. Yeah, well, I don't think it was in the advanced copy. This is the first book. This is the second book. Again, thank you all for coming. It was a great day, great conversation. And I highly recommend No Strangers Here. Go out and grab your copy.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay. All right.